Welcome to Extraterrestrial Reality. Well, recently Ross Coulthart, the Australian reporter and investigator, the person who interviewed David Grush recently for News Nation, he was on another interview. He was getting interviewed himself in this one. This was with Curt Jaimungal of Theories of Everything, a very popular YouTube channel. And there's a lot of things. It was a pretty long interview. I'll leave the link for this so you should check it out, because it's definitely worth checking out. But during one portion of that, Ross was talking about possible disclosure, and he has a very pessimistic viewpoint of that. Anyway, here's a little clip from that interview with Curt Jaimungal, when Ross Coulthart makes this statement.
No, the simple fact is that I don't think there's the political will at the moment for this to be made public. I don't think you're going to see what a lot of people in ufology dream of, which is the president standing up at a lectern and saying, "Ladies and gentlemen, we are not alone." I don't think the world is ready for that at the moment, or at least that's the view of the Pentagon and the intelligence community. And I think it frankly suits strategic objectives of the United States to maintain national security dominance, that it keeps the fact of recovered technology confidential. And I do think there's a strong likelihood, if not probability, that this will all be put back in a box, that there will be quietly changes made at a very high level in Congress to ensure that the Gang of Eight, at least, is briefed properly about this. The Gang of Eight is a group of, I think it's 9 very senior members of Congress who are selected because of their seniority to be briefed into the most sensitive secrets in the US government. And I wouldn't be surprised at all if a decision was made that, yes, we admit the existence of this program to that committee, and we keep it all off the books for now, because this is extraordinarily sensitive.
So there you go. I guess we might as well all go home, because it's not going to happen. That's what Ross Coulthart says. And actually, just up until recently, I pretty much felt the same way. I was starting to feel maybe that we might be moving in that direction, and maybe even this year. I mean, we do have some hearings supposedly going to happen, actually, as this month, July, where some whistleblowers are supposed to be going to Senate committee hearings, House committee hearings, and possibly even testifying in public venues where we can get to watch them live on TV as they are asked questions. We'll see if that happens. We're all sitting back with bated breath. But, I guess in a way, after all these years, it's 76 years at least of this cover-up, I mean, I guess we really have to take a step back and take a breather, maybe. Maybe Ross is right on this one, because, it's going to be tough. It's going to be tough. We're relying on people in Congress, really, right now. I mean, that's basically our best hope, to keep pushing this. We need them to push this. We need them to be calling whistleblowers in and having them testify. And hopefully, we need to have them testify in public venues soon. Is that going to happen? Or are they going to be discouraged at some point? Is the world ready for disclosure? Will it ever be ready for disclosure? That's my answer. I'll answer that question with another question, because will we ever be ready for disclosure? I think now is as good a time as any. But I felt like, usually, as people know, people who have been following my podcast for the longest time here, I've been pretty much thinking that we're not going to have any kind of disclosure. I'm very pessimistic too, until recently, until after the Grush revelations, but more so after hearing that there are other whistleblowers that have been talking to Congress, and that makes it a little bit more different to me. That changes the game. So that's why I was thinking maybe perhaps this year there have been other people out there in this world talking about this. For instance, just on Richard Dolan was talking about the possibility that we might be marching toward that reality, that they're going to actually finally disclose this. I don't know, but I'm still keeping an open mind despite of what Ross is saying here. But obviously, I felt the same way as he did about this for the longest time. A lot of people out there do feel like we're marching toward disclosure. For the longest time, I was not one of them. But with the recent revelations, and particularly the fact that there are other whistleblowers stepping forward, well, that changes my opinion, right? As for the time being, of course, we'll see how things go. I guess at some point I might be sitting here with egg on my face and be very upset that nothing happened. I mean, we might be ringing in the new year, 2024, and we're still in the same situation then as we are right now. We'll see. But anyway, he was attacked for his comments, of course, by the debunkers. Of course, the biggest debunker of our age, Mick West, who at some point in the future will be moving into the dustbin of history, because he's going to become completely irrelevant once the truth comes out. Because, of course, a lot of us out there already know that there's most certainly an extraterrestrial presence here on this planet. There's beings that are non-humans that possess technology that exceeds anything that we have. And he's going to look like a total fool, and he'll be exposed for the disingenuous fool that most of us know that he already is. But he had to get cocky about this on Twitter, and he responded to this to Ross Coulthart's this belief that disclosure is not going to happen. And anyway, here's what Mick West wrote about this on Twitter. He says, "Here, Ross Coulthart predicts that despite all the whistleblowers testifying to Congress about flying saucers in hangars at Lockheed Martin, there will be no actual disclosure of evidence of extraterrestrials. Maybe his story simply isn't as good as he thought it was." Actually, Ross responded to that, and he says, "Completely dishonest. My comments were clearly about a Congress's willingness to publicly acknowledge the growing likelihood of a secret crash retrievals program. It was not a concession that Senator Marco Rubio firsthand evidence of senior officials is supposedly weak." No, so he's saying that it was completely disingenuous, and there was a lot of other people that were saying the same thing to Mick, and of course. And Mick responded back to him saying, "The misrepresentation here is yours. You are predicting no disclosure. That was your comment. I suggest that is actually because your story is weak." So he's saying that his story is weak. How is anything that Ross Coulthart's been talking about recently weak? How is that possible? He had a whistleblower that he was talking to that he interviewed on News Nation that everyone across the world has been talking about. He's been talking about all these different things. He's been researching this stuff for a long time now, and he's doing everything he can to try to get to the bottom of this, and he's actually a disclosure proponent. Now, how is his story weak? How is this story of non-human intelligences on this earth weak in any way? The only thing that's weak, Mick, is you. You, Mick. Sorry, old man. Sorry. Better luck next time. I mean, this gets you angry, doesn't it? I mean, this guy is just a clown. All of these people are clowns. But anyway, we're going to find out, I guess, this summer. Are we going to get anything? Are we going to get somewhere? I don't know. Again, Ross Coulthart, he has connections that most of us don't. He's talking to people on the inside. The feeling he's getting right now is that we're not going to get anywhere. We're not going to get anything. The disclosure is going to be staved off, at least for the time being. That's what I got out of what he said, and he could be right. I feel the same way most of the time, except just until recently, as many people know. I was saying that I think there might be a chance. We'll have to see, but I just don't know. I mean, there's an effort, obviously. There's people that do not want this to come out for a lot of reasons. And I mean, there was a lot of other things in that interview that Ross had with Curt Jaimungal that was also interesting. He's talking about like how this started and everything, like how he believes it was a mistake, that something happened in the past that allowed this cover-up to become what it is right now. I mean, my personal belief is what has happened is that sometime in the past, the government basically gave carte blanche to defense contractors to handle this situation, to basically take it out of the hands of the government and make it and hand it over to private contractors, have them work on it secretly, and if they come up with anything, they'll let the Department of Defense know. Basically, if anything ever lands or crash lands or whatever, anything's ever found, the Pentagon will alert this defense contractors, whichever ones are involved, right? Halliburton, Lockheed Martin, whoever, right? Alert them to it, and they send in special teams to recover these things, take it back to where secret locations, study them, try to reverse engineer them, and keep it a secret from the public. That something like that has happened in the past. That's how I see it. Something most certainly happened in the past, because there were how many people over the decades that have actually talked about this publicly. Again, starting with Roswell, we know that there's been a cover-up for a long time, and I think over time it turned into this thing where no matter how many Freedom of Information Act requests you file, you're never going to get any kind of information because the government doesn't have anything. They don't have anything. So it doesn't matter, like with people like John Greenwald from the Black Vault, right? He could file all the Freedom of Information Act requests he wants, right? You'll get some documents sometimes that talk about UFOs. A lot of them will be blacked out, right? However, there'll be nothing in there about crash retrievals because guess what? The government's not handling that aspect of it. Somewhere in the past, right? All of that stuff was handed off to somebody else, the Secret Control Group, which I believe is comprised mostly of people representing defense contractors, right? And it's all private, right? It's the public doesn't have any right to look at that the way things are set up. That's how I think this thing has been arranged somewhere in the past. There was some talk in the recent edition of Forbidden Knowledge from Jacques Vallée, or excuse me, Forbidden Science by Jacques Vallée. There was some discussion about this, that it might have been Richard Nixon back in the early 1970s who made it even harder for anybody within the public to try to dig out information about UFOs and crash retrievals and anything to that effect. So who knows? I guess hopefully we'll know at some point in the future, but and hopefully Ross Coulthart is wrong about everything here. But again, I'm with them. I mean, bring it. He's trying to bring everyone down to earth and keep your expectations low because we know how this game works. We know how it's been working for a long time. He's probably right, and maybe we shouldn't get all worked up about this. I got a little bit worked up recently, like I said. Maybe I need to pull it back a little bit, but I'm still somewhat enthusiastic that something might still happen. With the fact that some of these whistleblowers might be testifying publicly, that might just hopefully maybe burst the bubble. We're going to find out. However, there are some other issues with whistleblowers, and there's another story that came out just recently, and we're going to have to talk about that. We're going to take a quick break, and we will be right back. Okay, we are back. Now, there's another story from this reporter, Matt Laszlo, who from askapol.com. This guy's really been, I've been talking about this guy a lot recently, right? He's been having a lot of different articles on here. It's very interesting. Here's another article that he just released. This was on June 30th. Exclusive. Oversight Chair Comer says some UAP witnesses have failed background checks. So that's not good. That's not good. Anyway, apparently some of the whistleblowers, according to this article, I'll get into the article here in a second, but some of the whistleblowers that Congress has been talking to behind the scenes, they did background checks on them, and the background checks showed that maybe we shouldn't be interviewing these people. I guess some things turned up that make it look like these witnesses aren't good witnesses. And there's a theory about who these witnesses are, where they came from, and I'll get into that too. And I happen to believe that the theory is probably correct, but that's only a theory. Anyway, let's read some of this article, and I'll leave the link for this so you can check it out for yourself. Again, hey, I want to say before I do read it, hey, Matt Laszlo, keep up the great work, man. You're really filling in some holes here for us, giving us some information that we otherwise probably wouldn't be getting. It says here, while UAP whistleblower David Grush was vetted and found credible by the Inspector General, House Oversight Committee Chairman, it just says House Oversight Committee James Comer, says he's one of the leaders of the committee, says some of the other witnesses House Republicans wanted to testify on UFOs are being replaced after, quote, some issues, end quote, were flagged during their congressional background checks. It's pretty amazing. Some of the background checks we're getting back on some of these folks, Comer exclusively tells Ask a Poll. I know that we had to reshuffle the deck on a few witnesses because of some issues. While it's still unknown why some potential witnesses are being replaced, from how Comer describes the nature of the problem, it seems they weren't deemed security risks, but rather political risks. Let me just stop there. That sounds bad, folks. That sounds bad. Obviously, some things popped up that's going to probably make some of these whistleblowers that the Congress has been talking to behind the scenes look like a complete absolute nuts. Do I think that these are the same whistleblowers that David Grush is talking about? I don't think so. I think he was talking about people inside the government who were actually working on some programs. Maybe he did talk to a couple of these people, but I think the people that we're talking about here aren't involved directly at this point. Anyway, continuing here. It says here, a direct quote from Comer says, "An old trick and oversight is whoever the minority witness is or whoever the majority is, first thing the other side does is background checks on them to see if they've ever been accused of being a racist or if they have a felony," Comer says. 99.9% of the time, nothing comes back. I guess, and then Laszlo points out that this seems to be that 0.1%. Still, Comer says former intelligence officer Grush seems credible to him and investigators. He says House Republicans hope to hear directly from him and the others, quote, "as quick as we can get the witnesses set up," end quote. So, here's another direct quote from Comer. It says, "So Representatives Tim Burchett and Anna Paulina Luna on my committee are the two that are kind of taking the lead in that. It's interesting. It's not an issue I'm an expert in, so I don't know anything about it. But apparently Burchett and Luna are so they're really excited and our staffs are real excited about it." And then he has the entire transcript of his interview with this guy. So, again, check out Matt Laszlo's website, Ask a Poll. He has there's more to this. But anyway, on Twitter, I just want to say, before I even go to Twitter here, I just want to say, yeah, that doesn't sound good, that some of these whistleblowers that were going to before Congress, no, we can't have obviously if they brought certain witnesses up, the debunkers out there would probably have a field day tearing these people apart, looking at their backgrounds and making a fool out of the whole thing. And that's a good thing. Actually, I mean, in a way, it's a bad thing that some of these whistleblowers they failed their background checks, but in another way, it's a good thing that they're looking into this, because otherwise, had they just brought them out and maybe even have them testify publicly during a public hearing, that would make that could bring this whole House down. It could ruin this whole effort. So that's a good thing that they did this. But anyway, one of the Twitter user that I follow named Skeptical Believer, he pointed out this was during that interview with on Curt Jaimungal's show where Ross Coulthart was being interviewed. He pointed this out. He says, "Did anyone else catch Coulthart's admission on Theories of Everything that Greer has had people go to Congress? Willing to bet this isn't unrelated." Yeah, I'm willing to bet that too. I'll bet you some money. If I'm not going to I don't make bets, but if I were, right, I would bet you that those people, some of these witnesses were probably witnesses that were sent there by Steven Greer. That's just my opinion. I've talked about this before. I know there's a lot of people who listen to my podcast who are fans of Greer and think that he's, I mean, some things that Greer says to me, I agree with them. But a lot of the things he's been doing over the last few years, I completely disagree with. I don't approve of his programs where he has people spending a boatload of money to hang out in the middle of nowhere to see UFOs. I'm not sure if I believe that. To me, it seems like a money grab. And another thing that I have a problem with is his recent press conference that he had. I mean, when he said that it was going to be indisputable evidence he was going to present, and he did not. He did not present any indisputable evidence during that press conference. He did not. There was nothing there that. I mean, we've seen things like that before. He didn't bring out any part of a craft or a part of an alien body or anything like that. He brought out a couple of witnesses, and it was just people talking at a podium. And some of the witnesses, how do we know? I mean, what kind of whistleblowers? Imagine the kind of whistleblowers that Greer might be sending to Congress. I mean, who knows what their backgrounds might be like? I mean, I think the whistleblowers that we need to have are people that are right now involved in these programs, not somebody that had an experience 10, 15, 20 years ago, right? That we can't have that. See, to me, Greer hurts this effort. He hurts the effort. That's just my opinion. Doesn't make me right, but that's my opinion. I think he started off on the right track. It was back in the 90s when he first came on the scene, right? This guy's speaking truths here. There's something here, and there's a cover up and all this other stuff. But then when you hear some of the other things that he says, for instance, the worst one I think is when he's saying stuff like. That alien abductions are operations solely of the government and that extraterrestrials have nothing to do with it. That's nonsense. Like, how does he know these things? And then he also other assertions too is that all these extraterrestrials here they are here on noble purposes, that they are here to help us. Like, how do you know that? There's no way that you can know that. But again, I digress. That's just my feelings on Greer, and I'm just wondering if the witnesses that they're talking about here were witnesses that he was pushing toward Congress as whistleblowers. I'd like to know the answer to that. But I would suspect that skeptical believer is probably right. Again, that doesn't make him right, doesn't make me right. I would suspect that that's probably the case, though. Because if the whistleblowers the kind that Grush was talking about, people who are actually working within the Pentagon, right? If they're failing, I mean, they wouldn't be working in the Pentagon right now or working on secret programs right now, right? Had they have funny background checks, failed background checks, it just wouldn't be going on. So yeah, we'll see as time goes on what the story is behind this, but that's my opinion. Again, doesn't make me right. I guess we'll find out in the future. And there is going to be some other things coming down in the future. There's some other things that I have brewing that I'm getting ready to talk about here soon. And there's something that I heard about just recently, and I'm going to be I'm going to be talking about it probably in the next podcast, probably tomorrow. And it's something I've never heard of before, and it's an eye opener. Anyway, until next time.